Most people think cheating is about attraction, temptation, or dissatisfaction in a relationship. But psychology suggests that sometimes something deeper is happening. In some cases, cheating is not only about another person, it is about a quiet crisis of identity. There are moments in life when people begin to question who they are, who they have become, and whether the roles they live in still reflect their true self. During these periods of internal uncertainty, behavior can shift in unexpected ways. What appears to be betrayal on the surface can sometimes reflect a deeper struggle happening inside the mind. Understanding cheating through the lens of identity helps explain why people sometimes act in ways that contradict their own values. It reveals how emotional confusion, self-doubt, and the desire for change can influence decisions that later feel shocking even to the person who made them. Identity is not as stable as most people believe. Throughout life, individuals build a sense of self based on roles, relationships, achievements, and expectations. Someone might see themselves as a loyal partner, a responsible parent, a reliable professional, or a dependable friend. These identities create structure. They help people understand their place in the world. But over time, the same roles that once felt meaningful can begin to feel restrictive if a person starts questioning whether those roles still represent who they are. Psychologists often observe that identity tension tends to appear during periods of transition. A new career stage, aging, personal disappointment, or emotional burnout can trigger quiet self-reflection. The person begins asking difficult questions about purpose, fulfillment, and authenticity. Here is where the situation becomes complicated. When someone feels uncertain about their identity, they may start searching for experiences that help them rediscover parts of themselves they feel they have lost. Sometimes those experiences appear harmless at first: a new friendship, a flirtatious conversation, an interaction that feels different from the routines of daily life. But the emotional impact of these moments can be surprisingly strong. The brain responds to novelty and attention with powerful chemical signals. Dopamine increases when something feels new or stimulating. But beyond the chemistry, there's a deeper psychological effect. The person may feel seen in a new way. Imagine someone who has spent years being defined by responsibility. They are known as the dependable one, the stable one, the predictable one. Then, suddenly, they meet someone who sees them differently. Instead of focusing on their duties, the new person notices their humor, their curiosity, or their hidden desires. That shift in perception can feel electrifying because it reflects a version of the self that has been dormant. Pause for a moment and consider something important. When someone becomes deeply drawn to another person during a period of identity confusion, are they always chasing the other individual, or could they be chasing a lost part of themselves? This question reveals why cheating sometimes feels emotionally powerful, even when the circumstances are risky or irrational. The new connection becomes symbolic. It represents freedom, possibility, or rediscovery. In many cases, the affair is less about escaping a partner and more about escaping a version of the self that feels limiting. The relationship becomes a stage where the person experiments with a different identity. They might feel more spontaneous, more confident, more emotionally expressive. These shifts create a sense of renewal that can feel intoxicating. But identity experiments often carry hidden costs. When someone begins acting outside the values that once defined them, the mind experiences internal conflict. Psychologists refer to this tension as cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when behavior and self-image no longer align. A person who sees themselves as loyal might struggle to reconcile that identity with the act of betrayal. The mind searches for explanations to reduce the discomfort. Sometimes those explanations involve reinterpreting the relationship. The person may begin convincing themselves that their current partner no longer understands them, or that the affair represents a deeper emotional truth. These narratives help the brain protect its sense of identity, but they can also reinforce the behavior, making it easier for the situation to continue. Another psychological force appears during identity crises. It is the desire for reinvention. When people feel trapped in routines or expectations, they sometimes crave dramatic change. An affair can temporarily provide that feeling of transformation. It disrupts normal life patterns and introduces unpredictability. Suddenly, the person feels like they're living a different story. But here is the surprising insight. The excitement people associate with affairs often comes from the experience of becoming someone new rather than simply being with someone new. This distinction matters because it reveals the deeper motivation behind the behavior. The emotional charge comes from identity exploration rather than pure romantic attachment. Think about moments in life when people reinvent themselves. A new career, a move to a different city, or a significant lifestyle change can produce similar feelings of renewal. Affairs sometimes mimic that process in a more secretive and emotionally intense way. Let me ask you something worth reflecting on. When someone begins acting in ways that seem completely unlike their usual self, is it always a sudden moral failure, or could it sometimes be a sign that their sense of identity is shifting beneath the surface? This perspective does not excuse betrayal. The consequences of cheating can be deeply painful and damaging, but understanding the psychological dynamics behind it offers a clearer view of why people sometimes behave in ways that contradict their own values. In everyday life, identity pressure often builds quietly. Someone might feel unrecognized at work. They may feel emotionally distant in their relationship. They may sense that parts of their personality have been pushed aside by responsibility. These feelings create an internal gap between the life someone lives and the self they imagine they could be. When an opportunity appears that seems to bridge that gap, the emotional pull can become very strong. Attention from a new person can feel like proof that another version of the self is still alive. The brain interprets that validation as exciting and meaningful. However, identity changes that occur through secrecy rarely resolve the deeper conflict. Instead, they often create additional tension because the person must maintain two different versions of themselves at the same time. On one side is the familiar identity built through years of relationships and commitments. On the other side is the experimental identity emerging through the affair. Holding both identities simultaneously can become emotionally exhausting. Over time, the person may begin realizing that the deeper issue was not the relationship itself, it was the unresolved questions about who they are and who they want to become. This realization can be uncomfortable, but it also opens the door to growth. Identity crises are not always destructive. In many cases, they signal that someone is ready to examine their life more honestly. When people face those questions directly, they often discover healthier ways to reconnect with themselves. Honest conversations, personal reflection, creative pursuits, or meaningful life changes can provide the sense of renewal they were searching for. The important insight is that identity exploration does not have to occur through secrecy or betrayal. It can occur through awareness, communication, and intentional change. Relationships themselves can evolve as identities evolve. Partners who remain curious about each other's inner lives often maintain stronger emotional connections over time. Instead of assuming they already know who their partner is, they continue learning about the person they are becoming. This openness allows both individuals to grow without feeling trapped by outdated roles. The deeper lesson is that human behavior is often driven by identity needs that remain unspoken. When people feel disconnected from their sense of self, they may reach for experiences that promise rediscovery. But rediscovery does not require abandoning the life someone has built. It requires understanding the parts of themselves that have been overlooked or ignored. If this perspective changed the way you think about relationships and human behavior, take a moment to reflect on it. Many actions that appear confusing on the surface begin to make more sense when we examine the psychological forces shaping them. Feel free to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Conversations about identity and relationships often reveal insights that many people quietly struggle with but rarely discuss. And if you enjoy exploring the deeper psychology behind human behavior, consider subscribing to continue learning about the hidden patterns that shape the way people think, connect, and evolve.